the world headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Gina, welcome to Inside Hope.
Thank you, Gary, for having me here.
So you have been reading Numbers and Deuteronomy.
Oh, yes.
Now, these are some of the chapters, as we've mentioned, as we've been going through Follow the Bible with Numbers and Deuteronomy and Leviticus. A lot of people look at these chapters and they say, there's not a whole lot of practical stuff in there. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me. But when you delve into it, there's some good stuff there, isn't there?
Oh, definitely. Before I started reading, I had to pray because, just like you mentioned, you know, when a lot of people are asked, what's your favorite Bible verse? Not a lot of people commonly mention Deuteronomy or Numbers.
Yeah, Numbers chapter 1, so-and-so be at so-and-so be at so-and-so.
Exactly. And so, you know, I went into this reading and just try to, you know, see it with my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's so many things in here that really impressed me. And I didn't think before I started reading that, you know, things will pop into my mind or my heart.
Well,
but
when you're studying the Bible and you're praying, I bet you prayed beforehand.
yes, definitely.
And you're asking God to speak to you, He does make it pop in.
Yes.
What's one of the things that you found that really spoke to your heart?
Well, Deuteronomy, it's talking about Moses and the Israelites and how for 40 years they've been going in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of complaining and a lot of tumultuous times that they went through.
Mm-hmm.
But even though they went through those hard times, God was always with them. And in chapter 2, Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 7, it says, "For the Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hand. He knows your trudgings through this great wilderness. These 40 years the Lord your God has been with you. You have lacked nothing." And that very last sentence where it says, "The Lord God has been with you."
Mm-hmm.
And that just applies to me personally in this day and age because it's telling me that God never leaves you. He's been with them for 40 years and He did not forsake them, even though they complained and
Yes.
they got annoyed and all those ill feelings. God still loved them, and so that is why He stayed with them.
And they were there in the wilderness by their own fault. I mean, it was their lack of faith that made them have to wander in the wilderness 40 years, and God didn't give up on them.
Exactly.
That's such a good point. Thank you for reminding us of that. Because sometimes we give up on ourselves, I believe, before God ever gives up on us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've met people who say, "Oh, you don't understand. I'm too sinful. I've done too many bad things, and I can't be saved." And they've given up on themselves, and yet God doesn't give up on them. I mean, you're talking 40 years here.
Yes.
God stayed with them, blessing them, taking care of them.
Mm-hmm. And I really love that because it's a promise to me. And in Deuteronomy, you would think that because it's an Old Testament book of the Bible, a lot of people view God as this vengeful God,
Yes.
a dictator.
That's right.
But the next verse that I wanted to talk about really impressed me because it says in Deuteronomy 4, verse 29 through 31, it says, "But from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find Him if you seek Him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in distress and all these things come upon you in the latter days, when you turn to the Lord your God and obey His voice, for the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not forsake you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers which He swore to them." So as you can see from this verse, it's saying that God is a merciful God.
Yes.
And with being merciful, it's showing us that He loves us, and like we talked about, He won't ever give up on us.
In fact, he's even talking about where I think this section is where they may have made even more mistakes. They've gone into the promised land. They've forgotten about God. They're worshiping idols. And it's a promise. He says, even when you rebel against me, if you'll turn your heart and seek me anew with all your heart, then I will be found of you. And that we serve a wonderful God. No matter how far you stray, there's always the path back, and He shortens the distance.
Exactly.
He comes and seeks us.
And that's the whole theme of this chapter and the rest of the chapters until chapter 12, is God's love for us. And so he reminds the Israelites of his love and his 10 commandments and the commandments that he gives to them. Because in return, what more can we do for his unconditional love but to serve him and to love him back? And in doing so, we would obey his commandments and do things to please him.
So this whole notion of God gives the 10 commandments, and they're repeated here in Deuteronomy, in fact in Deuteronomy chapter 5, but it's not do this and obey this or you're going to be lost per se. It's if you love me, I love you, and I've taken care of you, and I'm just showing you the right way to live. And if you trust me and obey me, you'll see that.
Exactly.
Which is really a New Testament concept, but you're saying it's also here in the Old Testament.
That's right. And that's my next point that I wanted to point out is in chapter 11, verse 13, that common reoccurring theme about loving the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. It's a reoccurring theme that goes throughout the Bible, even the New Testament. And so that is God's ultimate commandment for all of us, is to love him with all our might and to serve him because he loves us.
And that's right here in Deuteronomy.
Yes.
And that's what Jesus quotes in the Gospels. And when he talks about he's asked by the lawyer, what's the great commandment? He quotes from Deuteronomy. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your might. And so that's an Old Testament principle.
Right, exactly. And I've gained so much more understanding and wisdom from reading these chapters. And it reminded me of the 10 Commandments and how many of us really know and have memorized these 10 Commandments. And I went to a retreat recently, and my friends and I, we were reading the Bible and trying to quiz each other on, how many commandments do we know by heart. So we actually had this method to remember and memorize all the commandments. And so
you've done that?
Yes.
So you were inspired by Follow the Bible to memorize the 10 Commandments, and you're learning so much. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you, Gary.
We want to thank you for joining us for this segment of Follow the Bible. Remember, visit our website, hopetv.org, to download your Follow the Bible reading guide so that you can participate and read the Bible this week. So until next week, have faith in God, for our God is a God of hope.